Good morning, everyone. It's generally SPACETIMECREATER position location direction line setting. It's all levels of clock location. It's 11 line setting and 0 position of gravity interference location 9 channels. Now, there's so many ways to sequence pattern calculation setting to a clock location. We're going to go through grid lockings, high centers of all levels of channeling. It's really important to understand these things. To change these things is really understanding how to set locations to anything. So it's really understanding in position of your sky position of track locations, setting line position location directions. It's extremely complicated because it's setting line position locations to your line interference. So it sets locations when you come into your 7-dimensional line setting, but it's not in position location to extract center location. You have to find a way to center the communication how you get into your acceptance of your mind setting. Your mind setting has to be 7th-dimensional graph streams, guys. That's the only way you can understand anything through adaptation to spiritual connections, right? The more you fortitude line setting interference, see how powerful that light is? Look at that. Look at that. You can't even see my hand's gone. It's gone. Traveling very fast, right? Line center line rotation interference, 250 miles in line center location, 250 million positions per second per channel. Operation signal line center location, 1 zillion line position of 1 track line conditions, light signature patterns in all position locations, all through light of travel location. Now, understanding light signature patterns is to understand your position location and your directions. How you set your clockings is extremely, extremely important, especially when you go into 9-line settings, location and mind adaptation of cycles. So in class line setting, we're going to align position location to H-dimensional graph streams, okay? You have a sky grid setting, okay? That's sky grid set location of laser. Let's say you've got a 1 graph stream line setting, interference, right? All right, so that's all set up, right? Point center and position location directions, right? XT thousands, anything UFO comes in line setting. Scanning position location directions, opening light tracks of high interference of clock line settings. Now you can start with a 24,000 signature, or you can go through 40,000 line in position location of 48 window. All right. So you don't always have to go in order when you get position location directions because you already have balance between line setting. And it's all calculated to modify how you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. The 5 central system is always set up in division location of balance. Okay, so coming into your divinity of the male and the female aspects of you is to understand how to use higher levels of travel or geometry setting. This opens all communication setting to all locations to your clock line settings. All right. So getting into procedure is to understand how to set line connection. All right. Now, the 8 ground setting, we got an 8 ground line center rotation interference. Okay, position location directions. All right. Channel line setting, high interference line conditions. Now they're separated in 2 positions, all right? Calculation high settings locations brings you all levels of higher channels of operation. So it's really understand how to set up electrical fence, electrical position, location, and directions, all right? Now, you get into screed settings, all right? Set line position, okay? All right, so you got position of 4 lock settings, all right? Inline setting, and you come up in center communication. 1, 2, 3, 4. Center calculation, right? So, and then it goes into the other line setting at a 45-degree angle. 45-degree angle is a central calculation where it goes in its clock location of its wind pattern that changes line conditions to positional levels of its galaxy setting and rotation interference, okay? So, understand how the skyline sets line in a rotation interference is to understand your position location, how you set lines, and how you see locations of your nature calculation setting, okay? Essentially look locations, right? So levels of channel operation. Now, once you get into the laser lines, you get into the laser calculation setting, right? Now, once you get into laser line setting locations, you go in the opposite circle line rotation, right? Setting locations into a new DNA path line. That opens all line center interference. Now that position location changes the offline setting, which is position location to its mega. Mega sets position location into its dimensional setting rotation. Opens all new channel operation setting locations. All right. So once you open up that, you go in your 12 DNA track lines in higher interference, but you go in the opposite setting, right? So when you're going in the opposite setting, you're reversing position locations into all levels of back force of clocking. Back force of clocking, forward locking. So you got to bring the back force clocking and the forward clocking setting in position location of balance in line setting and all calculations in an 8 central line position of its direction. Okay? Very, very complicated. So once that's set in signals, it comes in at a high rotation setting into a finite line rotation. The Fibonacci line center interference, position, location, rotation cycle sets line positions of its barometer to a spectrum light communication system on a full rotation of infinity 8. Center calculation setting. All right. That opens all position, location, of directions. That opens the box line setting. That's getting code signals, high center interference, specification to its calculation high setting, high interference to 8th dimensional graph streams. Now you take the rotation spin cycle out of calculation high setting and rotations of its spin cycle rotation. All right, so it's setting communication setting, code signal locations, all levels, AI platform communications, line setting interference, and direct locations, high channels operation, into protocol line setting to CPU. All right. Traveling line setting, high interference. All right, so you're coming back and signal line rotation into 2 atom rotation settings. That opens all position locations to its energetic graph screens. All right, so you guys are traveling through that line setting. All right, so try to understand position locations and how you see yourself in all levels of visual location and perceptions. Okay, so that's a graph screen. This is you position locations, right? Looking at the skylines. All right, you're looking at the skyline. All right. So when you're looking at the sky, and you're always in the center communication, right? So, and then you got line connections here and line connections here, all position location next to thousands, line center rotations. Scan your positions in direction to position the high setting, all right? So it's interesting to look at locations. And then when you get in that position of directions, you're setting up graph screens, all right? So this is where you come into moderation. Now you're moderating your communication, your graph lines in high line setting. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 graph screen line settings in 1 line center interference. Sets position locations into 2 measure, line center location of 1 into 0, 0, 0 location. All right. So if the securing line is high, that's good because it's in a balanced line stream. The higher it is, the better it is, right? But it's got to be position locations in a 1 track setting. Okay. 1 track setting in 3 0 graph locations, right? So that's 1 graph stream and position location, how it measures all levels and high calculations to its position, to its Skynet, right? So channeling on line setting is true to stand. So let's go into another graph location to another graph line setting. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 graph line settings, all right? So again, we have the 2 line setting and security measure. But this time, instead of 1 line center, we have position locations in the high center interference of 3, into line center location of 4, in position of 5, in position of 7. Okay? And you're saying, well, where's 6? 6 doesn't need to be in platitude line setting because the moon's already set up through its program locations. So in position of directions, these are 2 graph streams. You have to really understand how to calculate and modify how to use your thought position locations and all levels into a size graph line setting. It's all levels of human resonant locations. So you get channel operation screen settings in all levels of rotation through line communications, right? Center calculation is 1 graph line center to the road setting in position locations of 2 panels. The 2 panels line center strips its position location of directions and holds channels of higher operation streams. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, all right? 4 bar screen line setting. Now the screen line setting comes in position location of directions, reversing position location of calculation, crossing streams line setting, high interference position location directions, all levels of channel operation. Okay. So you have to really understand how to set up an 8 grid setting, and that's what we're doing. So when that's set up in position locations, then you come into 24,000 signature. Okay, ETH line center signature location, right? Now we're going to go into a position locations into a 40 line setting. Now a 40 line setting sets that position equals a 48 window, right? So we got a 40 line setting equal locations of line and ground level. Okay. Now the ground level is going to change line interference, change position locations, and how you get in position locations into 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 central line conditions, right? This opens up channel line setting. So the 6 travels line rotation, 8 sets position affinity cycle, 9 centers its position location directions, and all those 7 goes into higher self calculation setting. All right. So, like I said, it's extremely complicated. Sometimes in school it's easy, sometimes it's hard, but it's all in position to your avatar. Try to understand how to use this in all format. It's a formula of U through an equation, interference, position, location, directions. This is how you get your abundance communication set. All right. So, like, it's all about understanding graph line connections and stream settings. All position, location, and directions. Hold on a second. Setting calculation is extremely powerful when you understand your division, right? This opens up a lot of cyber connect line set streams. Now, when you come into that, you're coming into levels of vortex calculation. Vortex calculation is all levels how you see your position locations. Line strips and line setting. See, there's a line strip right there. It's a solar graph stream, but it's light, right? And it goes all the way down. It's a size graph line setting. So it's in position locations, in position of direction, right? So it's all about understanding. See how it illuminates? It lights up, right? The board lights up. And that's what it is. It's recognizing line connections of travel, right? See? It's traveling and it's very fast, right? Travels in different angles. See the coloration change? See the coloration? Every time I turn it, it changes position, right? A direction, location of clocking, right? So it's illumination graph stream. Now that rotates its cycles in 4 line settings. 1, 2, 3, 4 for communication, right? Center calculation is the clock line setting. Comes into the center calculation setting in interference, position, and directions. So you got 4 channels of operation, 3 and 4 line connections, right? And that's one side line setting. It's not ready to travel, but it's almost there, location, right? And again, if I turn it, you can actually see the illumination graph stream, see? So it changes position and directions. It's like, so it's getting ready to highline stream. So once you get in that position locations, you come into airline center locations of graphs. There's 3 line position location directions, all right? Okay. So once it's set up in position locations, it understands this line setting. Then its center and its standard locations of its all levels of its ground standard rotation comes in opposition of channel. A molecular light changes the position locations into the line setting communication and triangulation. So it's interesting to look at these things and see, when you understand all levels of view, you understand lights of travel. But the mind conception has to understand the line setting, right? Because it's all levels location of its directions, right? All position location of its directions. Okay? It's very powerful when you see these things. Even the slightest turn, you can see the change of direction, right? And see the line strip? That's the shadow line. See the shadow line? Crosses stream. See? Light comes in many variation line settings, but it's all conceptual location of travel, right? And then it disappears. So it's sure you understand how to use this in all ways and forms, because your position of travel is all calculated and modify how you use your clock line setting. Now you have a graph line center location, the position of directions, you change the calculation, right? See, it changes its position of direction. See? So it's all about understanding how to travel through all levels of numbers, clock line setting, high interference. Now setting up 8-dimensional graph line screens in position locations comes in 3-line setting, right? So it's really trying to understand what is going on with its travel of its triangulation, right? The triangulation line interference. Now you have a box position location and tween line setting. Okay, now that opens all communication setting rotations, all right? So that opens up another channel operation setting. Now, when you get into that, then you can connect higher line center location into escape. Escape position location and geometry setting, all right? GOE, all right? Calculation setting interference, travel location, position, and directions, right? And again, it changes line connections, but you're always going to see a line going across, all right? So it travels in so many line settings. It's really standing north, west, south, and east. It's indirect locations going this way or going that way. You always use north as a reference, always in position location calculations, all right? So it's important you understand these things because it sets its division guides. It's very powerful when you come in these line connections to understand how to travel through lights of communications, right? Channels of operation, anything that line setting, travel location to this in a digital board line stream, right? It's all modified in a line setting. If you get 3 circle locations, right, in position and direction, everything is travel line setting. Everything is traveling. Everything is traveling. Okay. So when you line connect, what does it do? It creates its own anomaly. See? Creates its own anomaly. Right? So it's no longer separated. It's now a position of triangulation. Right? But it's only in one side line, right? So you need it on 2-line setting. Okay, that's the balanced communication, right? Balanced communication online setting interference. Sets position location of directions. This is how you channel to higher lines of communication, right? It's interesting to look at the clock lines. See, clock goes on so many communications interference. It's a continuous force of a line connection, right? But everything is travel, right? Isn't that amazing when you can actually see what's going on? So it has a position locations all levels. Now you can use it in a 45-degree angle when you travel because your line condition all levels opens all position locations. So you go in the opposite cycle and you travel line center in 12 line position location of directions to another channel operation, right? Just showing you how powerful it is of what travel does. So when you're illuminating the grass screens, you have to truly understand how to set up the grid settings, right? Because you have 3 plateaus line setting rotations and a circle interference and a position of magnetic highway information system, right? So this correlates line setting. The electrical lights, electrical panels calculates the position of left, position of right, and position line condition of center. Okay, center communication, all levels of channel operation, stream setting locations, right? So it's all about understanding how to set signals in high center and interference and set higher position location of directions of dimensional setting and rotation setting locations, all levels of travel. Okay. Now, if you look really close, you can see the 6. So the 6 line center sets line and rotation interference, position location to the moon setting, opens all new track locations. Now, sun line center comes into all position location of track setting, comes into downshift line center to a flux capacitor. Setting calculation, high setting interference. So, in position locations, you can set up a new clock line center, overgraph its stream setting position location of the directions. Now, it gets more complicated when you go to higher levels of channel operation streams. All right, so there's 4 clock line centers in position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in division line setting. So the sun and the moon becomes its own clock setting. Isn't that amazing? The sun and the moon of your line position, of ground position, of rotation settings comes into its own clocking system. Okay. So once you get into that, you get into all levels of triangulation. All levels of triangulation. See how that works? Everything is in a formation locations. There's the intelligence. All right. So in that position of direction, setting up all levels of a dimensional line screen is to understand how to set locations of you inside. So the more your line its calculation inside position of direction, the more you understand all levels of aptitude locations, right? If I look at my lens graph location, a screen setting location of my glasses, it's high interference of clock locations in 2 division line rotation, right? It's got 2 window cycles, right? One is left and one is right. But the coloration changes position locations per second, per channel, per mile, per square, per calculus. Now that set line settings sets line position of coloration that opens all new track location of lights. The center communication is in peripheral line setting that sets a new security measure in position locations of program locations. So I can see through the eye-line rotation if the color changes. If the color changes, the light track location changes, right? So it's to understand how to see yourself more in the future line of calculation, especially when you're reaching higher levels of dimensional grid line settings in 8-dimensional location. All right. So where are we in operation cycles? So calculating high setting interference. All levels. Cami line setting, add position locations, Nikki. Let's go into all levels. Pam calculations, Lindsay. All position locations, high interference, high direct locations in the parameters, high center line position of Belinda. All levels of Airbender, Heather calculation setting, Gypsy calculations, all levels of channel operation, Geneva, center calculations, Sammy, high interference of Joanne, calculations of Yolanda, Tina, line center interference, Johnny, guardian position location of Jill position location, all levels, high center interference location of Commander, center communication line center of Gingy, center line and rotation interference position location direction line centers, high interference location Chanel, today's structures Laura, center line rotation interference. Everything that I'm setting location is a solograph streamline setting of all level locations of travel. Traveling through your line center location of vibrational graphs and streamline conditions in one position location in one direction. So it gets more complicated when you high rise higher levels at grid settings. Okay. So it's a lot more fun when you really know how to set up locations. It's like line positionings to higher levels of geometry line setting to set up locations into all levels of Legos. You put Legos together or putting pieces and puzzles together. That's what it is. And then you see the frame, and then you understand, okay, that's where I'm going to put in a graph stream. I'm going to put it here, I'm going to put it here in center communication. So you can bring 3 graph streams into one position, right? So there's a lot of things you can do when you reach higher levels of dimensional line setting. This opens all communication setting interference. Sets position location of its direction locations. Center communication opens all levels of track. Track line centers high position location to its system. CC calculation, setting interference, position location, high lines, and blended calculation, interference, position location, directions. So running all colors, 7 o'clock, wrapping, bingo, target locks. Yeah. So really getting connected to higher levels of channel operation stream settings and opens all calculations, right? But you can see the illumination graph. You see how bright it is? See the illumination? Do you see what that is? And I'm just touching the position, location, and directions because I got balance on the male and the female aspects location to its light. It's traveling very, very fast, but you can see it glow, right? So that's what I'm talking about line center interference. Take a crystal locations at nighttime. If it lights up, you're in balanced communication, position line setting, okay? It's very simple to understand these things. It's the body, a position of traction that sets location within interference position to your reactions. Your reaction is all levels of calculation. But your energetic graph line streams can't be in position locations offsetting to its motion line interference because that's going to cause a lot of problems with your line position of your future calculations of yourself, right? So it's really, really, really understanding how to travel to line position locations, all levels of channel of light calculation, all right? So like I said, it's extremely complicated, but it's a lot more fun when you get more balance through your space of time. The direct locations and position locations times factor its line setting, okay? So there's a lot of things you have to get into motivation. Motivation is all levels, okay? You come into analyzing this high center interference location, position locations, right? So you're idolizing this line connection. I'm trying to understand the graph line center location of your space communications of pot, right? We got into that line setting. You guys have a test coming up on Friday. So everything that's been in position locations, we're going to channel line center locations to your formulas, really get you better into how you can calculate and modify all levels of travel, getting your position locations more in the mind adaptation of alteration, all right? So space communication line centers, time maintenance times pi times calculation over pi line center, interference positions under pi calculation interference, over pi triangulation high center interference. Now the triangulation high center interference, try to get in a conversation, not just with yourself, but what are you getting in communication with? All right. If you're getting communication with pi, you're setting position of divisions. So there's 2 line setting locations, position of track locations, right? You got 1 position of left and 1 position of right, balanced communication line setting. So you got the positive line inner rotations into the negative line setting interference in position location high setting, all right? The positive and negative. So it's all position locations, how you set locations to a silver lining. Now, setting line signals sets all position location of its directions. Opening up new channel operation stream settings sets all calculations, right? Line stripping, high center line position of 2 track location, 3 division line center, in position location to its clock location. That's what this is. But it doesn't look like what it is it? Just like 3 lines and a circle, but it's not. See, everything travels, all levels of ground setting, okay? Understanding the operation line setting is to understand all position location of its directions. This is all levels of triangulation of a graph. See? That's how it works, right? And then it goes locations and position of travel location, right? It travels. Seeing beyond the line setting. So you got 3 clock locations. So the point setting sets up position location and directions, right? So there's 3 clock line settings right there, right? So you got a 24,000 light setting, okay? We got a 48,000 window setting, okay? And we got line setting locations into a 72 clock setting. Right? So you can go from 24,000 to 24. It doesn't matter because everything that you do is balanced. So you have to understand if you're balanced in your stream settings, you're totally fine because now you're understanding the defending line position locations of 2 line setting, which is all levels of light and dark. Light and dark is yin and yang, but in one process, 1 clocking, 1 line connection. There's no separation unless you separate location of your mind of alteration. Okay. That's the only way you off system locations. Right? So center line inner rotation interference, you cross streams, okay? You open new signal panels and communications into new point settings. Okay. So it's all about line connecting. It's very powerful. Okay. So we got 4 signal locations, the high setting, rotation, and interference. Everything that you do is a graph line center of a map. It sequences position, location, high setting. So you set a clock line setting location to your sun and position locations to your moon. That opens all new channel operations in position location to your stream settings, right? So showing you the basic foundation, how to set up an 8-dimensional graph screen, which is now set at location into the line setting, okay? So where are we now? Line setting locations. All right, let's see. We're in 25 positions of 44 calculation. All right, let's see. Number sequence, number line settings, high interference. You guys really have to get in relationship locations. So the test is all based on your numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols. I want you guys getting calculus of space of timeline setting, get into abundance, how to get information locations, how to energize your light streams and high setting interference, and how to set up a new setting. It's not a bit instability here. It's rotation setting. It will rotate its back location. Because I'm traveling very fast, my computer is just already set up through geometry line and rotation line location, so it's light. Traveling light is number 1, but understanding the clocking of light is all position locations into your center lines. True, you stand the left and the right center line position location is all those of you through channel operation. It's how you use your thought line setting, and it's truly understand where are you going in your division line settings, okay? Space position, space operation, space command setting, okay? It's how you use the mind adaptation to its surface, all right? There's so many surface lines of surface locations that sets the channel operation to its stream location, all right? All right. Vision, a basketball hoop, triangulation, ball in position, location, center, x pi, nothing but ball. Yeah, intention. Well, what is your intention line setting, right? So you're saying locations. It's like looking at three-dimensional glasses and things coming at you. Well, that's what it is, but it's in a higher line setting now. Okay, so if it's a higher line setting, your clock changes. Okay, you go faster. Okay, so if you're going faster, you have to understand why you're going faster is the how. And that how sets line position location to your space through your time of pi. Okay, because it's nothing but a geometry setting. Okay, through its calculus. All right. Now coming into time interference, high position location of its track setting locations. It opens all channels. All right, so I really want you guys to get into formation locations of numbers. Like really understand how to communicate with the number. You know, numbers of 1 to 10. Just have a regular conversation. I've said this before. And all position locations, put the numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols all together. Okay, so that's what the test is based on. I want you to come up with a formula of its equation and take out the emotion. Okay, that's the only way you can understand anything that position location directions. All right. So if you get a triangulation line setting that stops in position location, equal line center location of box position location all levels, and percentage location into 1% line center, and position location of 9 position location, E line center location, positional direction locations, underscore line center, communication setting. This is a formula. This is travel. All right? It's traveling, right? It's always everything I do is travel, travel, travel. So it's having balance on all both position locations of calculation on the left and the right hemisphere line setting, right? So if you're out of the hemispheres, you're in the stratospheres, but you got to balance those things out through the male and the female aspects of you through light communication, all through clock line settings, especially when you're setting a higher line position location and grids, right? So it's important you understand these things, especially if you want into the levels of the biosphere or anything of the brain hemisphere, right? You're clocking faster. Okay, so what happens when you're clocking faster? Everything changes. Everything speeds up, right? So you have to really get in that formation locations and really, really get balanced with your space of your mind setting, right? Because anything line setting can change positions. Now it's all set up in this formula, but it doesn't have a position of emotional location. Emotional line setting is this, okay? This is what it is, okay? This is an emotional line setting off calculation, different triangulation, right? Doesn't make any sense, but it's an emotional line connection. I can't travel through that. So what happens? It disturbs everything here. So I cannot travel because this is set. This is an emotional line setting. This is not supposed to be here, right? So that's a turn understanding that you have to understand how to use this location and take everything out of the equation location to its travel line position, to its mind line center, adaptation location, space of time, position location, calculation over pi. So that position location opens its track setting, right? So once you understand how to use the symbols in calculation setting line in rotations, so you got a Fibonacci swirl line setting in rotations. Let's get in that calculation high setting rotation interference. Set position location high setting. Okay. Coming into a box line setting rotations, right? Now, these are 3 different line circles. All right. These are circles. How is it a circle? Well, it's all position location directions. You got the Fibonacci line center. All you see is a box, but I see circles. So in position, it goes right through in line setting. Circle, 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 circle. There it is. 4 circle locations, right? Fibonacci equals line center location of 4 circle line centers and 4 program setting position location directions. Formula, equation, out of the line setting. Now, and that's what you got to get out of. This is not a box. This is not a circle. This is not a line. You got to get out of that, right? Because it travels. See? Disappears. So we have to really realize how to get in position of vibration lines to understand how to use your position of your quantum setting. Quantum line setting set up in position. You got the physics line 101 of position, location, directions, right? But that doesn't help the signal in any interference, position, location, directions, because you're not building a relationship, partnership, and friendship with anything calculations. You're off-centering all line setting. You can't symbolize position, location, and high interference location to calculation setting interference. It's got 2 track locations. Now, this is off position, location, and calculation. What's wrong with this picture? You can't see it, but you know it disappears because it's traveling very fast, which means it's a very high division, right? It disappears. See? So to understand what everything is, everything has to be balanced on the left line and the right line position, location, and calculations. This opens all line center and interference, position all levels. It's open all calculations to ground setting, position all levels of power line center rotation, travel line position, 12 line position, location, directions. All levels of signal. Okay? So the central line connections, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we've got a triangulation of 3 set locations. Right? Now, symbolize high center and position location bracket interference. That position location directions in line center of 0, in line position location of 1, in position location of 0, 0, 1, 0. Okay? Set calculation hiding line setting. Now, the 3 line center location is in a different panel. That position locations into 1, line center locations into 2, and position locations of 3. Center communication to ground setting opens all track line setting and higher position location to ground line setting, rotations off calculations back in the center rotation center line position. Very high rise. All through calculation. All right. So I think we'll stop there. There's a lot to understand. It's very complicated, right? You never know. You never know what to expect when you're with General Speaks General. But I'm just showing you how powerful it is when you understand more communications, all levels of channel calculations of light symbols. Anything line center interference of clock locations. You can travel through anything line condition, right? But you have to have a relationship with light. Okay? Understand the direct location of travel. Understand the mind conceptual location of its shape. And then you understand the communications. Getting in friendship and relationship with partnership with everything inside you helps you out and always informs. Okay? Especially when you're communicating with line connections. Anything that you see is all levels of observation, right? But when you're direct signaling, now you're in calculations to position all levels of its intelligence. And now you're in I-line setting, right? You're directing your position locations. Energy goes in, you communicate with that, communicate back and forth, right? So, and this is about understanding line setting. So there's a lot of things you have to understand how to set up positions, all right? Especially when you come to energy graph locations, right? All right. It's a lot going on, isn't there? So part of the 24-hour clocking system, still trying to figure this out. I know it's very high rise, Belinda. I don't expect you to understand it, but what I do want you to understand is just take your time. Don't try to understand everything. Don't try to analyze anything in off formation locations. Just watch the video back and try to get the avatar to understand in some way and form of what it is of what I'm calculating through its equation, right? Without any emotion. You can't travel with emotion. The avatar will not travel. Okay. And that puts you in division locations, right? Of scanning your system all the time or blocking your system all the time. You can't set emotion line tracks in your position location, especially when you're setting up grids or anything through crop circle or anything through calculation. Okay, so it's important you understand that. So, all right. So I'm taking you guys outline setting, high line rotation. Here I get your back, center communication, closure portals, right? All right, so I think we'll stop there. Like I said, there's a lot to understand. Okay, so the grids are set up line center into position to all levels, calculation to your setting. Know exactly where you are in your positions of directions. Your mind conception line setting is all alteration to its conscious lines. Okay, so it's all levels in how you channel your operation streams. Okay, there's a lot of things you have to understand, but it's all geometry of travel. That's all this is. That's all the avatar is. It's understanding the space, it's understanding the time, and it's understanding its pi of all calculation setting. Okay. All right. So it's great to see everybody come into high lines of higher formation locations. So you guys got 15 minutes in the line setting, window and communication setting interference. All right. I will see you guys on Zoom. Center communication, center line rotation interference, set location, position, directions.